Welcome to Gaming the Podcast. My name is John Robertson, joined as ever by Stace Harmon. And this week we are talking about Horizon Forbidden West, which is, unsurprisingly, probably, given the success of the first game, scored rather well throughout the vast majority of reviews. Now, Stace and I have different levels of experience when it comes to Horizon. So do you want to start us off as the comparative Horizon expert here between the two of us?
My credentials for that particular role are that I have platinumed the first game, Zero Dawn. I've played through the Frozen Wilds DLC, and just recently I've also completed, but nowhere near platinumed, Forbidden West. I've been through the main quest, done a bunch of side quest stuff. So I've effectively finished every piece of Horizon content that is out there, seen it through to the end at least. And I really enjoy these games. I did go through a period of like having open world game fatigue, and I still have that to an extent. Like there's certain open worlds that just don't really do anything for me, but I really get on board with the Horizon kind of the narrative and the whole kind of backstory of it really appeals to me. So that then makes me more engaged with actually just kind of going around the world and doing stuff. And there is a lot of stuff to do. I'm kind of full down on the side of being generally very positive about these Horizon games. And that carries over to Forbidden West as well. There's some great things it does, but there's also some things that I think it doesn't do quite so well as Zero Dawn, or some impact where the impact is lessened. That's kind of my experience of the Horizon franchise so far, which I know differs quite substantially to yours, right?
So I've tried to play Horizon Zero Dawn about 5 times and never got more than
I think too hard.
The most yes, it's too hard. The most recent time was recently January, just after Christmas,
in the lead up
and
to this
I got again a number of hours in. I got the furthest that I got further than I ever have, but yeah, I don't know, the original, it always just falls flat to me. Like I am not taken in by like the world or the underlying story at all. I don't, or not the underlying story, the underlying world building. Like, or just conceptually, the idea of like machine animals wandering around, and then there being like sort of tribes of people trying to survive in this world. I just don't. I think with my sci-fi,
does the
I like
concept
it.
This is what I was going to say. Does the concept interest you?
So with sci-fi, like I really like sci-fi as a general rule. Like it's one of my favorite things in general, not just in games. But I tend to like ones that are very heavy on, like sci-fi is brilliant at exposing or investigating or looking at politics and social structures in a way that a lot of stuff based in the present day finds it harder to do, because it too easily goes into satire, or when you're sending up things about stuff that happens now, it tends to be hard to kind of step back and have like an objective view of something. But in sci-fi, you can pump your world 2,000 years into the future, and you can look at threads and just general rules of or not rules, but like concepts of philosophy or politics or whatever, when you've moved the world to a place where you're uncoupled from it and you can see it more in a more kind of overall overarching light. That's not to say that you're not connected to it, because you can see yourself in the people of the world, but the world itself is being kicked off into many years into the future, so you're not tied by the politics of today and whatever. Like it's a different realm that you can explore, like a petri dish that you can explore things in. And I just don't think Horizon has enough of that for me to truly be really engaged in the world and what the characters are doing and the history of the world. It's all just a bit. It's heavy-handed. I find like it's everything's thrown at you so hard that there's no room for interpretation. There's just like, no, this is what it is. Like, it's like, well, okay. Like, I'm not I like to be able to, put myself in it to an extent, like in terms of, well, not myself, but my own thoughts into it. Not me as a how would I survive in this world sort of thing, but just like what am I reading from this world? So yeah, I wasn't really looking forward to Horizon Forbidden West very much at all, really. It wasn't really like on my list to play. But I have played it, and I don't know what the I don't know. So trying to avoid spoilers here. There will obviously be spoilers for the first game. There will be some spoilers for this game. I mean, I've gotten to the part where just beyond the part where you defeat what is essentially the first boss in Forbidden West. For those who have played it, I hope you've played at least some of it if you're listening to this. And I think it's way better than the first game. It's way better. Like it gets you to the action way quicker.
Yeah.
So,
Aloy doesn't start as a child, which immediately gives you a leg up on the first game because
but I think also because it doesn't have and it doesn't have to do the world building, and it doesn't have so much baggage to present you with in order for you to understand who these people are and whatever. Like it just gets straight on with it. And now I'm missing out on that because I don't really know what these elements are that most other players in the game will know. So there's a lot of education and a lot of things, a lot of my own education that I've missed narratively from not playing the first game or the DLC. Not playing the first game all the way through or the DLC. But so everything gets to the action much quicker here. So I feel lost narratively. I don't really, I can piece it together and the game kind of tells you what's going on all the time. But sort of like I don't really have any connection to these characters or what they've been through. But it doesn't really matter. Like the game seems much better than the first one at standing apart from the narrative and just being able to have a good time. Although I would say about the narrative on this one is that whilst I don't really know what's going on in terms of the bigger picture, I do think the individual characters are very well drawn. And it's not that I care about them, but I believe them to be more real than I ever believed them to be in the first one. Like there's a bit after you do the first boss and you're talking to this sort of village, head of this village, and you need to fix like a dying machine for her. And she's like all very nice and welcoming and is going to help you. And then immediately you go outside and you talk to well, it's the first person that I spoke to outside, and the rest of the sort of the tribe, the civilization are hanging around outside. And the first person that I spoke to hated my guts, and was like, "Get out of here, you foreigner! Like, it's disgusting. I don't want you around here." And that juxtaposition between there's someone over there in this place that really liked me, or is at least willing to help me, and then there's this person right here that hates me. Like that juxtaposition between two characters that are of the same tribe that should be, you'd expect them to think along the same lines, have two completely different visions of me. So while I didn't really care about or know enough to care about the actual story that's going on, those individual characters felt really real because they disagreed with each other despite being on the same team. And that there's a little thing like, and those, so it has like more moments already that are like more engaging for me than the first game ever did. And I think maybe that's because the first game took so long to build the worlds that I didn't care about, that I just lost interest in the game.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's also indicative of the story as a whole, that much more of it is kind of present day in Forbidden West. So it's happening, much more of the main thrust of the story is happening to Aloy, or because of Aloy for the most part. Whereas in Zero Dawn and in Frozen Wilds DLC, the main thrust of the story really was, I mean, of course there was a present day component, but really the main kind of emotional weight of the story was in the stuff that happened in the past, 1,000+ years in the past, and was delivered through text logs and audio logs and all those things that we're very familiar with, that I remember thinking at the time it felt a shame that we just don't have a better way of doing that and showing those things. And Horizon Zero Dawn tried to do a few things with like holographic projections where you watch a scene play out, and it, that's fine.
Yeah, we've all seen Star Wars.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's a little bit kind of clunky or on the nose, but nonetheless, I felt that the scenario writing and the story writing was better in that first game than the equivalent here, because here the story is told mostly through dialogue because it's happening to Aloy or because of Aloy. So, and that, for the most part, for me, just wasn't as strong. There are some standout characters throughout, which I won't, spoil specific people or their involvement in the story, but there is some characters later on that, like a couple of side characters, effectively, who are, for me, the sort of the stars of the show, both in their own performances as actors giving voice to that character, but also in just the actual written dialogue for those characters as well. So, and I think that's what it comes down to for me. That I think the story is more of a present story in Forbidden West than it was. But, however, unfortunately, for my own personal experience, I don't think it's as good a story, and it wasn't as I don't know. It wasn't as impactful. There was a lot of moments that had sort of more weight for me in those first two games, where you come to realise that, big spoiler here for Zero Dawn, that the Zero Dawn project in that first game isn't like the Hail Mary save humanity play that it's been presented as, both to you as the player, and also it's been managed like that in its communication to humankind and buying time for this Zero Dawn project to be finished. And it's meant to be like you're fighting against the robots, and you're meant to, you have to just buy us some more time and go out there and give your lives to buy us some more time so we can do this thing. But you learn later on that actually, right from the off, Zero Dawn was never meant to be like the people that were in the know knew that humankind was done. And so this was about the species' longer term survival. And there's like a bittersweetness to that just isn't there for me in Forbidden West. It's much more like, save the day, be the hero. Which I can see could absolutely be more appealing to people because it's more actively engaging, because you have more agency in you don't change things to any great degree, but you have more of an active part in that story, whereas in the previous one you were just kind of reading and listening to other people's stories. I think
that might go some way to explain why I never really got on board with that first one, based on what I said about liking sci-fi, because I wasn't interested enough in the core fundamental of the world itself to care about audio or text logs giving me the lore about more of that sort of stuff. Whereas now this one is much more character focused. I actually feel like, okay, well, I don't have to care about the world. I can just care about these characters, and that's enough. Whereas, like big sort of like, this is just like lore dumps, or like in a video, like I'm fine with that in a book or what, but in a video game like this specific kind of video game, an action focused open world game in which everything is built around the activities of this character, then it makes much more sense to me that the story would be more simple, in the sense that it's based around the actions of this character, that your entire experience is limited to performing actions through.
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely understand that. I'm not really a huge fan of Aloy. I think her as a character, she's one of the I would say one of the least interesting. She's not as interesting to me as lots of other protagonists, and I don't like. There's just a whole kind of savior thing going on. She goes to places, and it feels like it's always determined by one action. She goes somewhere, she has a disagreement with somebody, or she agrees with somebody and she agrees to help them, or she basically goes off, performs one action that then wins that person over, either because they admire her tenacity or they admire the fact that they forbid her from doing that and she went and did it anyway, and look, it's worked out really well. Or they agree with her and she goes and helps them, and then it's like, oh, you've done this amazing thing. There's it's kind of a whistle-stop tour, I felt, throughout, kind of stopping off here. What's the problem? I'll go and solve it, come back. And it's very forward, the momentum is there. There isn't a hanging about thing. It's like you go there, you understand who these people are, you go and do a thing. But Aloy I don't know. She has always kind of come across to me as a little bit. There's a certain amount of petulance in the way that she talks, and it's just a bit. I just don't really get on with her as a character. But at least there is like the control is given to you to go and do a thing, and then it's like, okay, that's why I can see why these people now think I'm awesome or think I'm, whatever it is.
I quite like that she's less than perfect, though. Like that she's petrolated. She doesn't feel real. She doesn't, but she feels like she's at least got some degree of varying levels of personality. I think there was too much. Maybe I like her more in this one because, well, again, it just goes back to that character, the character focus rather than like the world focus. Maybe. I think I found her much more annoying in the first one, but not necessarily because of her dialogue or what she was saying or how she was saying it or whatever. It was just that it was like the first one felt like I was just being asked to support and fall in love with this character whose primary personality trait, primary characteristic that defines her is just that she has a sense, there's been some sense of destiny placed upon her. Beyond that, it was like, what's she about? Like, who is this person? Who is beyond her being the fated hero of the world? Who is she? Like,
well, that's good because it does. The Forbidden West does explore that a bit more. And again, I'm going to avoid spoilers, but to say that it does explore who she is and this notion of her always being the only person that can do a thing, the only person who can single-handedly change somebody's mind or achieve a certain goal, or it explores that, and it explores why she acts like that and what that costs her and it costs people around her. So there is much more of there's just more of a more character development for her that extends beyond just the fact that she used to be a little kid and now she's grown up. It's like they've done all that in the first game, and now it's like, well, it feeds into this, like, I suppose a character arc, something approaching a character arc for her, because there's actual like moments of realization for her that are expressed through both her and through other people talking to her. And that's where some of the stronger side performances come in, because they're not acting just to reveal something about her character. They feel like they're acting as actual people. And then she's being made to see a situation in a different way, in the way that a conversation might work. You and I might disagree about something, and hopefully it's not about like determining who's right or wrong. It's about like, oh, okay, I understand that better now, having had that conversation, having had that discourse. And that's what happens more so in Forbidden West than it does in the previous game. So that, I think that bears well. I think if you weren't particularly enamored or engaged by that kind of world first story from the first game, I think that probably bodes well here, because this is far more character focused. So all of that said, for me, the story in Forbidden West is actually the one of the weakest parts of it, partly because I just didn't get on with it as well as I did the story for the first one. It didn't, for the people that who really dug into the first game and the DLC. There's a whole like side quest thing in the first game. This Apoca shitstorm is what it's termed as. You go around trying to find these audio logs and piecing together this like young cadet story and who was in the Air Force. And there was I thought there was some really strong writing in the first game. I didn't really find anything like that in Forbidden West. And I think it's Concrete Beach Party, I think is the name of the band that is formed in the DLC, which again gets a cute reference in this one, but there's no I just didn't find like those personal moments. It was all very grandiose. The story was all very like big picture hero story kind of focus. So for me, there wasn't like the smaller, quieter moments that felt powerful, just partly because they were side things. And it was like, it's optional, and it's like, oh, I found this thing, I followed this thread, and I've kind of engaged in that. But also partly the story I think is the weakest part, because so much of the rest of the game is really strong. Like almost everything has been improved from the first game. It can't have the same impact. When Zero Dawn came out, it was like, wow, Guerrilla have really stepped up here. Whereas it can't have that kind of same bolt from the blue effect or impact that the first game did. But they've just basically improved on every system in the game. I think they've pretty much improved on every single one of them. And through iterative design, it's like it is very much a sequel, but they've done it very, very well.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can't speak to how well the systems worked in the first game, apart from how they worked at the start. I know they're very different, but I think the opening in this one is way better than the opening in the first game. The opening of the first game, I get it. Like it was a super long tutorial that went on for like three days of gameplay time. And it just never ended. I was like, another trial, you say, to test my suitability for this? Oh, well, okay. Whereas in this one, they get you to the action way faster. And I'm guessing that's because they're expecting people to come here from having played the other games and having the experience. But yeah, it's not that you get into the action quicker in this one, although you do. It's that the variety of what you're asked, or what you can choose to do, is way greater. Like there's open world bits, there's structured level bits that are like, go in here and climb these things and kill these monsters, and then much quicker you open up the ability to like explore ruins and do whatever you want, like way quicker. So it just feels like the game is, classic for a sequel, or typical for a sequel, that the developer can be fairly well sure that most people coming to this have played the original. Like, it's just there's less onboarding to do. Like it just gets you in.
I think Guerrilla are also now just more practiced and better at creating this kind of game. They've had a lot more practice than they'd had this time 5 years ago when Zero Dawn came out. So there is more, and I think you can see that it feels more accomplished. Lots of the systems that were put in place, like I do feel like you can tell the strength of Forbidden West in its design and in its execution by basically picking at any given thread and exploring that. So combat or traversal, or even just something like inventory management or the weapon system or any of this, everything has multiple layers to it and integrates so much better with everything else. So like the scanning of the machines, right? So something I always liked about Zero Dawn was this notion, and I feel it too in something like The Witcher or in like Monster Hunter, is that notion of the hunt. And what I thought had been done quite well previously with Zero Dawn, where you kind of prep your gear and you get your, maybe craft some traps and you make sure you've got the right kinds of ammo, and then you do the scanning of the machine, and then you kind of maybe take out the smaller machines around it in terms of for the big ones, and then you tackle it. Here, that's taken to a whole other level through quite basic improvements in things like the scanning. So now you can scan a machine and you can just tab through the various parts of that machine. So you understand.
On the D-pad. Could you not do that on the original? I can't remember, but I do yet to focus it on the actual element.
And it was silly. Like in retrospect, it was
and the machines keep moving, so
exactly.
You can't.
Yeah, exactly. And also that could lead to mistakes, because you're like, oh, okay, that bit of that machine is weak to ice, and you may not have noticed that actually you're then scanning a different part of the machine, and so you're using ice against something that is strong against that, yada yada. But now you can actually scan the machine. You can tab through with the D-pad the different tabs. You can highlight individual pieces of that machine, which then kind of glow or they change color. So then what you're trying to achieve, and you're more empowered and you feel more in control of what you're doing. But that's been married very well with I wouldn't say it was a restriction. I would say it was a kind of closing off of some of the exploits that you did with the first game. I won't go into the super specifics, but tear arrows, for anybody that knows, tear arrows in the first game were ridiculous. They were the things that you could blow off pieces of machine really easily and turn what should be this big formidable creature, or mechanical creature, into kind of a toothless kind of walking bag of hit points. Whereas now you're much more restricted in that, and you're forced to think about the ammo that you're using and your other parts of your arsenal. So everything just feels tighter. It's much better integrated with the other systems in the game, and it just makes for a much stronger experience. It just feels like a better game to play, and again that goes into basically pretty much every avenue. So.
Yeah, I'm having less camera issues with this one. I seem to fall into camera issues constantly with the first one. I'm having much less of them this time. A slight tangent when you're talking about the weapons there. So again, I don't know how many hours through I am. 4 or 5 hours, maybe. I don't know. But the
whole thing took about 30 something hours for the main quest. Yeah. So to give you some context.
But already I seem to be at the end of or approaching the end of numerous upgrade paths. Like upgrading seems to be, front loaded. Like I've done like over half of my bow skill tree already. I think the hunter one already. I'm through a part of the hand-to-hand combat one. Like three or four of my weapons are at their max upgrades level already, which I was quite surprised about, given that I've only done one boss.
Yeah, there's more. There's definitely more. There's more decision making in terms of the upgrade of early weapons, and then at what point you decide to flip over to newer weapons that have the potential to be more powerful, but that start weaker than the ones that you've just spent time upgrading.
Yeah.
And there's more of an inventory management in that in a decision making, like a point of decision, not a constant having to cycle through different weapons because that's better against this, etc. But in an actual like. And initially I'd wondered about that because I felt like, well, is there then any reason to, or not any reason, but are you then almost punished for upgrading those weapons? Should you just hold out? But it gives you enough weapons. I mean, even up until the point of like approaching the 30-hour mark, I was still unlocking or still finding new types of ammo or new types of new weapons, which in the first game just doesn't happen. You get those. It's a very structured tier system in the first game of like the different coloured bows in the same way that you'd have different, coloured rarity in Diablo or Destiny or whatever. And so, yeah, this was much more widespread. There's more weapons attached to, like, you do a side quest and you might get this special weapon from this tribe. So all of that again is just kind of expanded and done better, without making it really finicky. I didn't really feel like it got to the point at any point where it was like, well, the difference between this one and this one is like a 0.5% in damage output or something. It doesn't go that granular. But there are like perks attached to certain weapons that means that it's not always just, the more powerful weapon is the better weapon. There's sort of reasons to keep some of them hanging around for a while. So, and your weapon wheel is expanded, so you can have more weapons on the weapon wheel. So it just, everything just kind of works better. And so that's, I think, for anybody that kind of bounced off Zero Dawn, perhaps because they found it, monotonous going through reams of text logs or, listening to people bleating on about what happened over 1,000 years ago. The actual action adventure part of this game is bigger and better. Have you done any of the relic ruins yet? They're like
so I was going to talk about those. Yeah, like Tomb Raider. So I wasn't so early in the game. This again is where I think the early game is so much better than the original. Like it's the variation is so much greater, and therefore the pacing applied to both various things that you're doing, and then the pacing applied to the whole experience, in that you can much more quickly decide which elements you want to include in your game and which you just want to ignore, like the relics or whatever. But I don't remember in the first one there being so much. Not only like the levels you have to go through. There's an early level. I call it a level because it is a level, like where it's it's an area where you can't get out of. And those bits are really well done. Like they're at like pretty high quality, like comparable to other games that are all that kind of content. But yeah, the ruins are they remind me of like Tomb Raider, like those puzzle rooms that they have in Tomb Raider, absolutely. Where you're trying to just get to a certain space or pick up a certain item or whatever. They're like that, but the ones I've seen are much smaller scale than that. They're more like intricate puzzles rather than the grand platforming challenges in Tomb Raider. Yeah,
and they do have, there's both throughout, as you could probably imagine. But yeah, I really liked the relic ruins. They kind of summed up the things that I liked the most about Forbidden West over Zero Dawn, because they are the moments where the game and the game designers leave you alone effectively. They're kind of these quiet moments where you're not given explicit hints as to what to do. Whereas when you're out and about in the world, and it's those kind of, this is the main path level design, you'll jump to a platform or you'll be navigating something and Aloy will say, I need to reach that platform over there. Or, if I, and you'll get these tutorial things pop up that will say like, remember that you can push back, and you can jump backwards, jump behind you,
Yeah.
which the camera might not be able to. You might not be able to position the camera to see that, but you would have seen it as you were climbing up. And it's just very quick to give you those hints. You'll arrive at a platform, and Aloy will almost within seconds. But oh yeah, I need to get over there. It's like, okay, just let me work it out. And the relic ruins do that. They leave you alone to work it out and to figure out. And I think the early ones, I remember being quite intricate. I remember having to go back to one because I kind of got to a point where I just didn't get what I was meant to be doing.
Well, there's one early on where it warns you that you don't have the right stuff to be able to do it.
You need, there's a particular type of equipment. And those I found to be rewarding in that way in terms of the problem solving, the puzzle solving, beyond just what you get at the end of it. You get, as you can imagine, you get kind of a shiny bauble, or you get some, like rare crafting materials or whatever. But those were the moments when the game is kind of, it feels the most like an actual world and an actual ruin that you are navigating. It's not like, it's not obvious because there's puzzle solving to it. It's not neatly laid out. I just follow these yellow handholds up to the top and then I jump off here. There's more of kind of an ambiguity about it because it's side optional content. So they don't have to worry so much about, like people getting stuck or people not getting it. So,
and things like tumble onto each other as well. Emergent gameplay or whatever. Like I was doing one, I think it was actually the one that I couldn't do. I didn't have the tool. And I think I only realized that when I went to the map and it says like brackets, you can't do this. Yeah.
Right.
There is some jargon or some text, some tagline that they use for when you don't have the right tool. And I can't remember what it is. But anyway, it said that on the map. So I was like, oh, okay. But that happened. I saw that on the map after when I was exploring one of these and trying to figure out the way inside. I just heard all this commotion behind me, and there were like these 3 humans fighting these 2 machines, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna have to deal with that first before I deal with it either by getting involved or by waiting until it all calmed down. I mean, obviously, I got involved. I'm Aloy. I don't just stand around waiting for things to happen. I make them happen.
You guys be quiet over there. I'm trying to solve some puzzles.
What are you doing? Say hello to this new Valor weapon attack that I've just unlocked.
Yeah, they remind me of Street Fighter. Those, they're like the ultras from Street Fighter. You get that.
Yeah, I like those. I've not really used them yet because I've actually why haven't I used them yet? Because I haven't come up against like a big enough enemy to use it, and I'm just like saving it for that time. So I have no idea how much I should be using those yet because I don't know how fast the gauge builds back up.
They fill up reasonably quickly, and there are mods that you can get that make that happen more quickly as well. And that's the other thing about the weapon system, that there are modifications that aren't just it adds fire damage or it adds ice damage or whatever. There's actual I suppose quality of life modifications as well that either speed up one sort of meter or they reduce the the timeout or the recharge on something else. So there's more to there's more reason to consider certain options over other ones. It's not just an obvious upgrade path for certain things. So I think you've seen, there of course is going to be a whole bunch of extra content types that you will be introduced to because there is a much wider range of things to do in Forbidden West. It does, I think, invariably it falls into that trap, as every open world game does. Well, it's not really a trap, is it? There's so many things that they give you to do that some of them just aren't going to be to every single player's tastes, and that's partly why they give you so many different things. It's like, well, you can pick and choose. Like some of this is there's a racing element where you're racing on your mount. I think they're called gauntlets, which I just was like, not this is kind of, I've seen this many times before, and I'm just not really interested in this. But then there's a whole bunch of other stuff that if that doesn't take your fancy, then there's other stuff that you can do. There's some interesting end game stuff as well, like content, not story, but like actual content to do, kind of these epic hunts effectively is what they are. So there's more. It's been built out better, I think. Everything has just been kind of built upon and nothing. It feels like nothing really has been taken for granted. Like they haven't changed things fundamentally for the most part. They haven't changed any systems, but they have improved them, and it looks like they've spent time looking at each one and how they integrate with the others, and then kind of improving each one with a view to making a better overall whole. So yeah, I mean it is a very enjoyable game. I think it's a very good example of this kind of open world game. Like there aren't a tremendous amount of surprises. I think if you've played any number of open world games, like there's not a tremendous amount of surprise. You still do things in the same kind of way. There's the whole like the toolnex thing for unlocking areas of the map is basically that thing of go to a high place and then you can see what other content is in the area. But they manage that very well because it doesn't reveal all of the map. It'll only reveal pockets of it, and you still have to go and explore areas. And it's not here's just a checklist of things to do. It feels like a useful tool. And because of developments that happen later on, there's more variety in how the toolnex work. They're more unique. Like there's more puzzle based sort of elements to them rather than just get to the top of this toolneck and see what's in the surrounding area. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to think of a single place for me outside of the story stuff where Forbidden West isn't just outright better than Zero Dawn, because I think everything has basically been given attention and has been improved, except perhaps the selecting things on your item wheel that you do with the D-pad whilst you're trying to run around. That still isn't great, because you have to take your thumb off the stick that makes you move to then select like a healing potion. So you get that awkward thing where you sort of have to do a weird, like, use your right hand, reach over with your right hand to kind of select healing potions whilst you're running away from something.
Yeah.
You know, it's that kind of thing.
If only PlayStation released a PlayStation Elite controller, like Xbox have the Elite controller with the paddles on the back,
some
that would
paddles,
solve a lot of issues.
Yeah. So, but yes, by and large, overall, I mean, it's as far as I'm concerned, it's a success. I think I had a look at the review scores, and they are very similar to the first game. I think Metacritic it's almost identical. And I think I put that down to the fact that, you know, it has lost some of that. It's a much more of a known quantity this time around. It's just that it's improved on lots of stuff. It's lost that ability to surprise, but it just does things better. So it kind of averages out, and we're also 5 years on, so, you know, it averages out to be basically a better game that's in the position of getting the same review scores as the previous game. But such as
well, we'll see how I get on with it. I mean, I am planning to complete it, and yeah, as I said, compared to the first game, for me, it's so much better. There's the pacing, I think, mainly when I think about it more. It's the pacing and the diversity of content in the first few hours. It's just, it's just as a sort of an initial engaging, grabbing experience. It's well beyond the first one.
I would highlight, just as we wrap up, two minor things that are worth looking into but are easy to miss, and they are actually found in the accessibility settings. There is there's an accessibility setting called arachnophobia, which you can turn off to remove spiders from the game, which I think is quite cute. I don't know how much practical. It's not like this game is riddled with spiders. I don't know how much practical use that is, because they don't have other equivalents. There isn't like a vertigo setting or a asphyxiation setting for the underwater section. So I don't know why they've got arachnophobia in there, but I thought it was quite cute. But there's also a co-pilot mode, which is, I guess it works like, when you have driving lessons. There's a second set of controls, so you can sit there with whoever your sort of co-pilot is. You can sit there with them, and they can play the majority of the game, but you can then just help them, be it through controlling the camera so that they don't have to, or just literally taking control on your own controller to do a jump without needing necessarily to pass the controller back and forth. And I think that's a nice nod to, there's a lot of people that want to play games like this, but for whom things like controlling the camera as well as doing everything else is too much, or negotiating, boss fights. It's like difficulty spikes on things like boss fights, and that does happen here for sure.
It's going to be hard
nice
to control it's going to be hard to play while someone else is controlling the camera, isn't it? The camera is part of like the movement that you.
It is. Well, I think it is for it's second nature if you play a lot of them, and you move probably the camera more than you move your character. I find that I do, but I think in terms of I've watched people try to play games like this where there isn't. It's like trying to rub your tummy and pat your head. There isn't the independent control, so like the camera will just swing like all the way. There's no like incremental graduated control. It just swings all the way. So I think just being able to like move it around to show you the most obvious sort of like point you at this. I think that's
that could work. You'd have to play very, very, very slowly though, because I mean, in part of movement, I mean it's really direction. So the camera dictates where you're looking in order to go, and if someone else is in control of that, then and if you're both thinking that where we should go is two different places, then it's going to be confusing.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you don't have to use it. You don't have to do the camera at all. The point is, you've got a second set of controls, and you can use that in whichever way, shape, or form you want. Which I think, compared to things like I don't know, like the Mario games, I think it was introduced in perhaps Mario Galaxy, where you could use the second that was on Wii, of course. You could use the second remote to put the cursor onto enemies and to freeze them in place for a few seconds.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of
as well.
You can collect coins. Yeah, this has kind of gone sort of that direction in giving a second player something to do, or you can literally just take it in turns, perhaps, and that's a very convenient way to do that because you could just pass the pad, but now you're sitting there both with one. So, but I think I can see the utility of it because I very directly have personal experience of people wanting to play games like this, and just this is like the first big video game they've played, and it's like they just it's alien to them. It's a completely alien concept trying to work out what this spaceship like controller can do with its 20 different buttons. So yeah, I thought that was quite a cute little addition for the people that find it useful. Yeah.
Okay, well, that is Horizon Forbidden West. I still haven't completed it. I will complete it and give some sort of update at some point. So I'll probably complete it using the camera controls by myself. But we'll see. We'll see how difficult the game is. Anyway, let us know what you think about Horizon Forbidden West. Come and get involved in the discussion. We are on Twitter at Indie by Design, and you can visit our website, indiebydesign.net. That's indiebydesign.net to gather information and buy the books that we create. Otherwise, thank you for listening, and we will see you again next week.